It is Wednesday, June 3rd, 2026, and this is The High Road, Logistics and Leadership. I'm Elena Rossi, and I treat every accident report like a crime scene.
This is Buck Reynolds.
I'm Jules Sterling.
And I'm Dan Miller. We have a great show for you today.
Actually, it is a fascinating lineup today. We're looking at a day that feels like a full-blown stress test for the entire global supply chain. Well, we have maritime security threats in the Middle East driving fuel toward a $6 average.
Look, here is the play. We've got a $10 billion last-mile monster deal between DHL and the post office, which is a massive Hall of Fame move.
If the mail trucks don't break down on the way to the curb, here's the deal. We're also staring down a liability cliff after the Supreme Court just stripped the broker shield in a unanimous ruling.
Well, it's not all hammers and litigation. Melton Truck Lines just dropped their biggest pay raise in history. And we're seeing record-scale electric fleet orders that prove the math is finally working. It's sort of a pivot point day for the industry, right?
Actually, I suppose we should start with the literal fuel in the tanks. Buck, you were tracking the Strait of Hormuz situation. And honestly, the news out of Iran and Japan is, concerning.
Here's the deal. The national average for diesel spiked to $5.65 per gallon this week. And if you're in California, you are looking at $6 easy. My thing is, it all comes back to the sour crude supply, the heavy stuff Gulf refineries need to make distillate.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Prime Minister Takaichi of Japan has been on the horn with the Iranian president 3 times this week alone. And, she is demanding safe and free passage for Asian ships.
It is high-stakes shuttle diplomacy. Look, Tehran says they will strive to make it easier for Japanese ships, but then you have the IRGC-affiliated news agencies saying that closing the strait is still an active option on their agenda.
Actually, you see, it's a total geopolitical gamble. If they halt message exchanges via mediators, which the Iranian news is reporting they've already done, well, then we are looking at a blackout. My thing is, you can't run a fleet on maybe when the fuel inventories are at their lowest level since 2000.
Right.
And it isn't just Hormuz. Well, President Lei in Taiwan is reminding the tech giants that 20% of global trade flows through the Taiwan Strait, nearly $2.5 trillion annually. If that corridor gets squeezed, the tech shock to semiconductors would be, actually, it would be catastrophic for anyone trying to refresh their fleet with new tractors.
Well, my retail accounts are already feeling that anxiety, right? They're seeing the U.S. Trade Representative opening a 3rd concurrent Section 301 probe into Vietnam and a new 25% wall on Brazilian auto parts and metal. It sort of feels like a whack-a-mole strategy for shippers.
Look, it's a results-oriented trade policy. Bottom line, you try to find breathing room in Hanoi or Brazil to avoid the China tariffs, and the goalposts move again.
Actually, Dan, it's a legal crisis, what some are calling the Section 122 crisis. Fleet managers are facing a massive gamble on whether to pay the duties or fight for a refund on every component they import.
It is sort of a sticks and carrots era for labor, too. Buck, did you see the Melton news?
I did. Melton Truck Lines announced a $10 million investment into driver pay. That is the largest in their history. And the thing is, we're talking 5 to 8 cents more per mile. Company drivers starting at 60 cents and vets scaling up to 70.
Look, that's a ball control offense. In a market this tough, you have to invest in the people who actually pull the lever.
Right.
But USA Truck, well, the folks who bought them, they're also shifting toward permanent mileage-based raises, rather than those one-time sign-on bonuses. It's about retention, not just recruiting.
Well, I suppose I'll be the reality check here. While Melton is handing out carrots, the regulators in Ohio are using a very big stick. Actually, they're notifying 5,000 non-domiciled CDL holders that their licenses might be downgraded.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, it's part of a federal standards cleanup. Basically, if you don't meet the domicile or language requirements, you are being sidelined. And my thing is, when we're already short on qualified drivers, losing 5,000 seats in one state is, well, it's a precursor to a capacity catastrophe. Exactly. And British Columbia just passed a mandate for outward-facing dash cams in all commercial vehicles, Bill M217. It is standardizing the very big brother tech that a lot of old-school drivers hate.
Because we don't like being treated like children. I mean, the thing is, forward-facing is one thing, but it's the trend of constant monitoring that gets under my skin, even if I know it saves on insurance.
Look, the data is proving it out. Kurt Nugent's over at Orange EV is seeing a record 600-unit order for electric terminal trucks. Not a pilot buck, but a full network replacement for a major logistics firm. No, really. Their leasing activity is up 272%. Fleets are bypassing the huge upfront cost and just paying for uptime. Bottom line, it is about the total cost of ownership math. And Kurt says it's proven now.
Well, before we get into the massive legal shakeup with the Supreme Court, I should probably mention our partner for the day, right?
Look, strategic logistics requires world-class engineering. This show is powered by the stack developed by Eric Christensen at Neural Network Media.
Support the architect behind the code. You can visit our Patreon at patreon.com/neuralnetworkmedia for a free trial and access to our daily briefing PDF. It's got all the deep research reports we're talking about today, right?
All right, back to the high-stakes chess game. Jules, tell me about this $10 billion DHL deal, because my head is spinning with those zeros.
Oh, it's a monster. DHL e-commerce and the USPS just signed a multi-year exclusive deal. It is more than $10 billion. DHL handles the upstream, pickup and sortation in 19 automated hubs, but then the Postal Service handles the final mile to every single zip code.
Actually, if I may, DHL CEO Scott Ashbaugh basically admitted that building a network of 170 million delivery points from scratch was impossible. So they're using the USPS as their reach. Well, it's a textbook example of capital efficiency.
If the post office doesn't lose the packages. I mean, the thing is, I hope Postmaster Steiner's plan actually accounts for that kind of volume. Because $10 billion buys a lot of stamps.
Look, it is a win-win. The USPS needs the volume to justify their transformation, and DHL gets a predictable, fixed-cost final leg that they don't have to manage. It is a pure play relationship move.
Right? And speaking of relationships, we have to talk about the liability cliff from the Supreme Court, because that is the big storm on the horizon.
Now it is time for Iron Lady's Verdict, our Wednesday segment where we perform a forensic audit of the week's most impactful legal and regulatory shifts. And today, we are discussing the death of the broker shield.
Oh, here we go.
On June 1st, the Supreme Court ruled unanimously, 9-0, in the case of Montgomery versus Carib Transport. You see, for decades, brokers have hidden behind the FAAAA, the Federal Aviation Administration Authorization Act, arguing that state negligence claims were preempted by federal law. Well, the shield is gone. Justice Barrett wrote for the court that selecting a carrier falls under the safety exception, and that means brokers can now be held liable for negligent hiring in all 50 states.
That's incredible.
Actually, it gets worse. In the Montgomery case, the carrier, Caribe, had a conditional safety rating and documented deficiencies in vehicle maintenance and hours of service. C.H. Robinson booked them anyway, and, well, a motorist lost his leg in an accident.
Look, it's a liability cliff. If you're a broker, you can't just say, well, they were active in the system. You have to exercise ordinary care.
What does ordinary care even mean for a digital broker?
Actually, Jules, that's the nightmare. It means whatever a jury in Illinois or Georgia or California thinks it means. My verdict is that the shield of uniformity is dead. Every major brokerage is already purging their load boards of carriers with high CSA scores. And my thing is, if you're a fleet with a conditional rating, you are about to be blacklisted from the major freight lanes.
Good. I mean, I'm the veteran here, but I've seen these fly-by-night outfits pulling high-value loads for pennies because they aren't spending money on maintenance. It's about time the brokers had some skin in the safety game.
I suppose. But actually, Buck, wait until the insurance premiums hit. We're seeing quotes for 30% hikes in broker liability coverage already. And then there is the second ruling. Flowers Foods v. Brock.
Is that the white bread case?
Yes! The Supreme Court ruled that last-mile drivers are exempt from mandatory arbitration if they're a key leg in an interstate journey, even if the driver never crosses a state line. Because the bread originated out of state, the driver is considered part of the stream of interstate commerce. Exactly. My thing is, if you are a carrier using independent contractors for the final mile, your get-out-of-court-free card just got shredded. You are now exposed to the full weight of the class action trial bar. My verdict for Wednesday, June 3rd, the era of geofencing your liability is over.
Look, that is a high-stakes fumble for the distributors. But it brings us back to why Melton is paying 60 cents a mile, right? You have to have the best drivers if you can't hide behind arbitration anymore.
Exactly. I mean, here is the deal. You pay for professionalism or you pay for a lawyer. 60 cents is cheap compared to a nuclear verdict in a negligent hiring case.
Well, it makes the TAT news feel even more important too, right? Nominations for the Harriet Tubman Award are open through August. $5,000 for a driver who stops human trafficking.
That is the kind of PR this industry needs. Not just more sensors and silicon. I mean, Joe Aguayo won it a few years back, and he's a hero in my book. Drivers are the eyes and ears of the nation.
Actually, I suppose it's a way to humanize the front line. Well, sort of like the trucks of art in New York. 5 new garbage trucks decorated by local artists. No, it's true. It's to help celebrate the sanitation workers. And, I suppose I prefer art to accident reports, but we have to keep our eyes on the duties. Did you guys see the new chassis tariffs?
Look, 76% duties on Mexican chassis? That is a wall of steel.
Actually, it is a border wall for subsidized sub-assemblies. Vietnam is getting hit with a massive 186% anti-dumping duty. The ITC final determination on May 20th basically proved that our domestic manufacturers like Stoughton were being materially injured.
I mean, we shouldn't be relying on foreign-made chassis for our national security anyway. I've seen those cheap units rust out in 3 seasons.
But, it is going to make the intermodal boom very expensive for my retail clients, right? They're already facing ocean freight surcharges of $1,000 per container because of the Middle East.
Look, it is a non-linear recovery. That's what FedEx Freight CEO John Smith is telling the market after their spin-off this week. They're trading as FDXF now. And he's saying the 4-year down cycle is just starting to thaw.
That does it for us today on The High Road, Logistics and Leadership. We've covered the $10 billion USPS deal, the literal collapse of the broker shield, and why your next chassis order is going to cost double.
Later.
Bye.
See ya.
We'll see you on the next high road.